All right, we are coming up on 8 o'clock. We are through our very first ad break, apparently. I'll have to figure out the quirks and how that works, but that's a learning experience and journey that we'll have to go through together. So, let's settle in, get comfortable, and pull up a seat, because we've got a new book to start tonight. Welcome back. Tonight is our first night of reading with an old friend. We're returning to Ernest Hemingway tonight with A Farewell to Arms. And you may or may not have noticed yet, but there are some very minor changes around here. Very minor, because I really haven't implemented a whole lot. But we made affiliate! Huzzah! Huzzah! So, we have a whole bevy of new tools and toys with Twitch. Really, the only thing that should hopefully be noticeable is that we are going to be subject to ad breaks every hour or so, which just so happens to align with our already current trend of taking a break every hour or so that I can not dry myself out to a husk. So, hopefully, it should be reasonably non-disruptive. I think the worst that we may run into is having some awkward timings where we have to shift or have to have a break urgently without a clean stopping point. But, other people do it, I suppose we'll have to as well, right? So, here's to a new journey. And to start off with a new journey, we're coming back to Ernest Hemingway. Those of you who've been with us all along may remember that we started our very first book when we started on YouTube with The Sun Also Rises by Ernest Hemingway. And so I thought this would be a fantastic way to really ring in this new step of our time together by returning with A Farewell to Arms. Never mind that this book is also topical with current events. That was, I promise, not intentional, but accidents happen. A little bit of when bad things happen, you try and find something to just latch onto, right? So, let's try and find this to latch onto. And this actually is a good book for that. Trying to find some nice things in the midst of despair. So, let's try and find our own nice things, huh? Alright, let's go ahead and get right into it then, because we've got a lot of book. I'm not sure exactly how long this is, but we are starting absolutely fresh tonight. So, let's shift over to our book nook and get started. This is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, with a very grainy picture for a title page, for a cover. Thank you very much, Gutenberg. Alright, A Farewell to Arms, Book 1. Chapter 1. Yeah, with the tying in of Demian to World War I, this felt like a natural shift. So I'm like, alright, sure, let's just carry it in. I hadn't quite realized at the time that this would be our first book of affiliate, and I also hadn't realized that, we're reading about World War I in the middle of, the start of World War III. Don't worry about it. Try not to get too concerned. Don't look behind the curtain. Alright, Chapter 1. In the late summer of that year, we lived in a house in a village that looked across the river and the plain to the mountains. In the bed of the river there were pebbles and boulders, dry and white in the sun, and the water was clear and swiftly moving, and blue in the channels. Troops went by the house and down the road, and the dust they raised powdered the leaves of the trees. The trunks of the trees, too, were dusty, and the leaves fell early that year. And we saw the troops marching along the road, and the dust rising, and leaves stirred by the breeze falling, and the soldiers marching, and afterward the road, bare and white. Ooh, I meant to mute that. Bare and white, except for the leaves. The plain was rich with crops, There were many orchards of fruit trees, and beyond, the plain, the mountains were brown and bare. There was fighting in the mountains, and at night we could see the flashes from the artillery. In the dark, it was like summer lightning. But the nights were cool. There was not the feeling of a storm coming. Sometimes, in the dark, we heard the troops marching under the window, and the guns going past pulled by motor tractors. There was much traffic at night, and many mules on the roads, with boxes of ammunition on each side of their pack saddles, and gray motor trucks that carried men, and other trucks with loads covered with canvas that moved slower in the traffic. There were big guns, too, that passed in the day drawn by tractors, the long barrels of the guns covered with green branches and green leafy branches and vines, laid over with the tractors. To the north, we could look across a valley and see a forest of chestnut trees, and behind it, another mountain on this side of the river. There was fighting for that mountain, too, but it was not successful. And in the fall, when the rains came, the leaves all fell from the chestnut trees, and the branches were bare, and the trunks black with rain. The vineyards were thin and bare-branched, too, and all over the country wet and brown and dead with the autumn. There were mists over the river, and clouds on the mountain, and the trucks splashed mud on the road, and the troops were muddy and wet in their capes. Their rifles were wet, and under their capes the 2 leather cartridge boxes on the front of the belts, gray leather boxes, heavy with packs of clips of thin, long 6.5mm cartridges, bulged forward, and under the capes, so that the men, passing on the road, marched as though they were 6 months gone with child. There were small, gray motor cars that passed going very fast. Usually, there was an officer in the seat with the driver and more officers in the back seat. They splashed more mud than the camions even, and if one of the officers in the back were very small, and sitting between 2 generals, he himself so small, you could not see his face but only the top of his cap and his narrow back, and if the car went especially fast, it was probably the king. He lived in Udine, and came out this way nearly every day to see how things were going, and things went very badly. At the start of the winter came the permanent rain, and with the rain came the cholera. But it was checked, and in the end only 7,000 died of it in the army. It's a abrupt chapter 1 ending there. I guess it's just setting the stage. I didn't really get a whole lot of stories from great-grandparents. I knew my great-grandmother. She actually only passed not too terribly long ago, on one side, but on the other side, or on my mother's side, I was pretty young when the great-grandparents had passed. So I didn't really get a whole lot of stories, or we weren't really around for much. It was mostly an Easter and Christmas sort of deal. So, but it is interesting to see what sort of stories people hear, whether they be old war stories or from different sorts of times, whether it be Depression or earlier. And it's funny how seemingly events from way back when are a lot closer than you might imagine, only a spare few generations across. Oh, that would do it. That would do it. All right, Chapter 2. The next year there were many victories. The mountain that was beyond the valley and the hillside where the chestnut forest grew was captured, and there were victories beyond the plain on the plateau to the south, and we crossed the river in August and lived in a house in Gorizia that had a fountain and many thick shady trees and a walled garden and a wistaria vine, purple, on the side of the house. Now the fighting was in the next mountains beyond and was not a mile away. The town was very nice, and our house was very fine. The river ran behind us, and the town had been captured very handsomely. but the mountains beyond could not be taken. And I was very glad the Austrians seemed to want to come back to the town sometime, if the war should end, because they did not bombard it to destroy it, but only a little in a military way. People lived on in it, and there were hospitals and cafes and artillery up side streets and 2 bawdy houses, one for the troops and one for officers. And with the end of the summer, the cool nights, the fighting in the mountains beyond the town, the shell-marked iron of the railway bridge, the smashed tunnel by the river where the fighting had been, and the trees around the square, and the long avenue of trees that led to the square. These, with there being girls in the town, the king passing in his motor car, sometimes now seeing his face and little long-necked body and grey beard like a goat's chin tuft. All these, with the sudden interiors of houses that had been lost to wall through shelling, with plaster and rubble in their gardens and sometimes in the street, and the whole thing going well on the Carso made the fall very different from the last fall. And when we had been in the country, the war was changed, too. The forest of oak trees on the mountain beyond the town was gone. The forest had been green in the summer when we had come into the town, but now there were the stumps and the broken trunks and the ground torn up. And one day, at the end of the fall, when I was out where the oak forest had been, I saw a cloud coming over the mountain. It came very fast, and the sun went a dull yellow, and then everything was gray, and the sky was covered, and the cloud came on down the mountain, and suddenly we were in it. It was snow. The snow slanted across the wind. The bare ground was covered. The stumps of trees projected. There was snow on the guns, and there were paths in the snow going back to the latrines behind trenches. Later, below in the town, I watched the snow falling, looking out of the window of the bawdy house, the house for officers, where I sat with a friend and 2 glasses, drinking a bottle of Asti, and looking out at the snow falling slowly and heavily. We knew it was all over for that year. Up the river, the mountains had not been taken. None of the mountains beyond the river had been taken. That was all left for next year. My friend saw the priest from our mess going by in the street, walking carefully in the slush, and pounded on the window to attract his attention. The priest looked up. He saw us and smiled. My friend motioned for him to come in. The priest shook his head and went on. That night, in the mess, after the spaghetti course, which everyone ate very quickly and seriously, lifting the spaghetti on the fork until the loose strands hung clear, then lowering it into the mouth, or else using a continuous lift and sucking into the mouth, helping ourselves to wine from the grass-covered gallon flask. It swung in a metal cradle, and you pulled the neck of the flask down with the forefinger, and the wine, clear, red, tannic, and lovely, poured out into the glass held with the same hand. After this course, the captain commenced picking on the priest. The priest was young, and blushed easily, and wore a uniform like the rest of us, but with a cross in dark red velvet above the left breast pocket of his grey tunic. The captain spoke Pidgin Italian for my doubtful benefit, in order that I might understand perfectly, that nothing should be lost. "Priest today with girls," the captain said, looking at the priest and at me. The priest smiled and blushed and shook his head. This captain baited him often. "Not true?" asked the captain. "Today I see priests with girls." "No," said the priest. The other officers were amused at the baiting. "Priest not with girls," went on the captain. "Priest never with girls," he explained to me. He took my glass and filled it, looking at my eyes all the time, but not losing sight of the priest. "Priest every night, 5 against 1. Everyone at the table laughed. "You understand?" Priest every night, 5 against 1. He made a gesture and laughed loudly. The priest accepted it as a joke. "The Pope wants the Austrians to win the war," the major said. "He loves Franz Joseph. That's where the money comes from. I am an atheist." Did you ever read The Black Pig? Asked the lieutenant. I'll get you a copy. It was that which shook my faith. It is a filthy and vile book, said the priest. You do not really like it. It is very valuable, said the lieutenant. It tells you about those priests. You will like it, he said to me. I smiled at the priest, and he smiled back across the candlelight. Don't you read it, he said. I will get it for you, said the lieutenant. All thinking men are atheists, the major said. I do not believe in the Freemasons, however. I believe in the Freemasons, the lieutenant said. It is a noble organization. Someone came in, and as the door opened, I could see the snow falling. There will be no more offensive now that the snow has come, I said. Certainly not, said the major. You should go on leave. You should go to Rome, Naples, Sicily. You should visit Amalfi, said the lieutenant. I will write you cards to my family in Amalfi. They will love you like a son. You should go to Palermo. You ought to go to Capri. I would like you to see Abruzzi and visit my family in Capracotta, said the priest. Listen to him talk about Abruzzi. There's more snow there than here. He doesn't want to see peasants. Let him go to centers of culture and civilization. He should have fine girls. I will give you the address of places in Naples. Beautiful young girls, accompanied by their mothers. The captain spread his hand, opened the thumb, and up and fingers outspread. This is when you make shadow pictures. There's a shadow from his hand on the wall. He spoke again in pidgin Italian. You go away like this, and pointed to the thumb, and come back like this. He touched the little finger. Everyone laughed. Look, said the captain. He spread the hand again. Again, the candlelight made its shadows on the wall. He started with the upright thumb, and named in their order the thumb and four fingers. Sottotenente, the thumb. Tenente, first finger. Capitano, next finger. Maggiore, the next to little finger. And Tenente Colonnello, the little finger. You go away, solo tenente. You come back, sotto colonnello. They all laughed. The captain was having a great success with finger games. He looked at the priest and shouted, Every night, priest, 5 against 1. They all laughed again. You must go on leave at once, the major said. I would like to go with you and show you things, the lieutenant said. When you come back, bring a phonograph. Bring good opera disc. Bring Caruso. Don't bring Caruso, he bellows. You wish you could bellow like him? He bellows, I say, bellows! I would like you to go to Abruzzi, the priest said. The others were shouting. There is good hunting. You would like the people, and though it is cold, it is clear and dry. You could stay with my family. My father is a famous hunter. Come on. We go whorehouse before it starts. Good night, I said to the priest. Good night, he said. That was a bit of a mess and a half. The soldiers all talking over each other and back. Don't know who's talking half the time. But that was a very authentic feel. You get a lot of... It feels like just some soldiers roughhousing and just talking over each other. Yeah, there's some rank involved, but they're kind of deep in their cups at this point. There's one thing that Hemingway is very good at, is making interaction feel authentic. Whether it be between friends, between men and women, between strangers. It's very natural, very human how he writes his dialogue and interactions. All right, Chapter 3. When I came back to the front, we still lived in that town. There were many more guns in the country around, and the spring had come. The fields were green, and there were small green shoots on the vines. The trees along the road had small leaves, and a breeze came from the sea. I saw the town, with the hill and the old castle above it, and a cup in the hills, with the mountains beyond, brown mountains, with a little green on their slopes. In the town, there were more guns. There were some new hospitals. He met British men and sometimes women on the street, and a few more houses had been hit by shell fire. It was warm, and like the spring, and I walked down the alleyway of trees, warmed from the sun on the wall, and found we still lived in the same house, and that it all looked the same as when I had left it. The door was open. There was a soldier sitting on a bench outside in the sun. An ambulance was waiting by the side door, and inside the door, as I went in, there was the smell of marble floors and hospital. It was all as I had left it, except that now it was spring. I looked in the door of the big room and saw the major sitting at his desk, the window open and the sunlight coming into the room. He did not see me, and I did not know whether to go in and report or go upstairs first and clean up. I decided to go on upstairs. The room I shared with Lieutenant Rinaldi looked out on the courtyard. The window was open. My bed was made up with blankets and my things hung on the wall. The gas mask in an oblong tin can, the steel helmet on the same peg. At the foot of the bed was my flat trunk, and my winter boots. The leather, shiny with oil, were on the trunk. My Austrian sniper's rifle, with its blued octagon barrel and the lovely dark walnut, cheek-fitting Schützen stock, hung over the two beds. The telescope that fitted it was, I remembered, locked in the trunk. The lieutenant, Rinaldi, lay asleep on the other bed. He woke when he heard me in the room and sat up. "Ciao!" he said. "What kind of time did you have?" "Magnificent." We shook hands, and he put his arm around my neck and kissed me. "Oof!" I said. You're dirty," he said. "You got to wash. Where did you go and what did you do? Tell me everything at once." "I went everywhere. Milan, Florence, Rome, Naples, Villa San Giovanni, Messina, Taormina." "You talk like a timetable. Did you have any beautiful adventures?" "Yes." "Where?" "Milano, Firenze, Roma, Napoli." "That's enough. Tell me, really, what was the best?" "In Milano." "That was because it was first. Where did you meet him? In the Copa? Where did you go? How did it feel? Tell me everything all at once." "Did you stay all night?" "Yes." "That's nothing. Here, now we have beautiful girls. New girls, never been to the front before. Wonderful. You don't believe me? We will go now, this afternoon, and see. And in the town, we have beautiful English girls. I am now in love with Miss Barclay. I will take you to call. I will probably marry Miss Barclay." I have to get washed and report. Doesn't anybody work now? "Since you are gone, we have nothing but frostbites, chilblains, jaundice, gonorrhea, self-inflicted wounds, pneumonia, and hard and soft cankers. Every week, someone gets wounded by rock fragments. There are a few real wounded. Next week, the war starts again. Perhaps it starts again. They say so. Do you think I would do right to marry Miss Barclay? After the war, of course." "Absolutely," I said, and I poured the basin full of water. "Tonight, you will tell me everything," said Rinaldi. "Now, I must go back to sleep to be fresh and beautiful for Miss Barclay." I took off my tunic and shirt and washed in the cold water in the basin. While I rubbed myself with a towel, I looked round the room and out the window, and at Rinaldi lying with his eyes closed on the bed. He was good-looking, was my age, and he came from Amalfi. He loved being a surgeon, and we were great friends. While I was looking at him, he opened his eyes. "Have you any money?" "Yes. Loan me 50 lire. I dried my hands and took out my pocketbook from the inside of my tunic, hanging on the wall. Rinaldi took the note, folded it without rising from the bed, and slid it in his breeches pocket. He smiled. "I must make on Miss Barclay the impression of a man of sufficient wealth. You are my great and good friend, and financial protector." "Go to hell," I said. That night, at the mess, I sat next to the priest, and he was disappointed, and suddenly heard that I had not gone to Abruzzi. He had written to his father that I was coming, and they had made preparations. I myself felt as badly as he did, and could not understand why I had not gone. It was what I had wanted to do, and I tried to explain how one thing had led to another, and finally he saw it, and understood that I really wanted to go, and it was almost all right. I drank much wine, and afterward coffee and strega, and I explained, winefully, how we did not do the things we wanted to do. We never did such things. We two were talking, while the others argued. I wanted to go to Abruzzi. I had gone to no place where the roads were frozen and hard as iron, where it was clear, cold, and dry, and the snow was dry and powdery, and hair tracks in the snow, and the peasants took off their hats and called you Lord, and there was good hunting. I had gone to no such place, but to the smoke of cafes, and nights when the room whirled, and you needed to look at the wall to make it stop. Nights in bed, drunk, and you knew that that was all there was. And the strange excitement of waking and not knowing who it was with you, and the world all unreal in the dark. It's so exciting. You must resume again, unknowing and not caring in the night. Sure that this was all, and all, and all, and not caring. Suddenly, to care very much, and to sleep, to wake with it sometimes morning, and all that had been there gone, and everything sharp and hard and clear, and sometimes a dispute about the cost. Sometimes still pleasant and fond and warm, and breakfast and lunch. Sometimes all niceness gone, and glad to get out on the street, but always another day starting, and then another night. I tried to tell about the night, and the difference between the night and the day, and how the night was better unless the day was very clean and cold, and I could not tell it, as I cannot tell it now. But if you have had it, you know. He had not had it, but he understood that I had really wanted to go to Abruzzi, but had not gone, and we were still friends, with many tastes alike, but with the difference between us. He had always known that what I did not know, and what, when I learned it, I was always able to forget. But I did not know that then, although I learned it later. In the meantime, we were all at the mess. The meal was finished, and the argument went on. We two stopped talking, and the captain shouted, "Priest not happy! Priest not happy without girls!" "I am happy," said the priest. "Priest not happy. Priest wants Austrians to win the war," the captain said. The others listened. The priest shook his head. "No," he said. "Priest wants us to never to attack. Don't you want us to never to attack?" "No. If there is a war, I suppose we must attack." "Must attack. Shall attack." The priest nodded. "Leave him alone," the major said. "He's all right." "He can't do anything about it anyway," the captain said. We all got up and left the table. I definitely have not really settled on voices for each of these characters. I'm not sure how many lines these characters are going to be getting, so I'm not sure how firm to stick the voices. They haven't really been named yet, so that's not generally a good sign, is it? And yeah, I've never read this before either. I think the only Hemingway I'd ever read before we started was Sun Also Rises. So this is a very different sort of experience so far. I like how Hemingway he writes in first person, and there's always that element of himself on the page. Yes, it is fiction. Yes, it's all brought up, but there's a kernel of himself in it. To call it semi-autobiographical is probably not far off. He writes from a place of knowing something and spinning other things out of whole cloth, and it's up to us to sort of pick it apart and figure out which is which, or just to accept it all and Just enjoy the good story. Chapter 4. The battery in the next garden woke me in the morning, and I saw the sun coming through the window and got out of the bed. I went to the window and looked out. The gravel paths were moist, and the grass was wet with dew. The battery fired twice, and the air came each time like a blow and shook the window and made the front of my pajamas flap. I could not see the guns, but they were evidently firing directly over us. It was a nuisance to have them there, but it was a comfort that they were no bigger. As I looked out at the garden, I heard a motor truck starting on the road. I dressed, went downstairs, and had some coffee in the kitchen, and went out to the garage. 10 cars were lined up side by side under the long shed. They were top-heavy, blunt-nosed ambulances, painted gray and built like moving vans. The mechanics were working on one out in the yard. 3 others were up in the mountains at dressing stations. "Do they ever shell that battery?" I asked one of the mechanics. "No, Signor Talente. It is protected by the little hill." "How's everything?" "Not so bad. This machine is no good, but the others march." He stopped working and smiled. "Are you on permission?" "Leave." "Yes." He wiped his hands on his jumper and grinned. "You have a good time?" The others all grinned too. "Fine," I said. "What's the matter with this machine?" "It's no good. One thing after another." "What's the matter now?" "New rings." I left them working, the car looking disgraced and empty with the engine open and parts spread on the workbench, and went in under the shed and looked at each of the cars. They were moderately clean, a few freshly washed, the others dusty. I looked at the tires carefully, looking for cuts or stone bruises. Everything seemed in good condition. It evidently made no difference whether I was there to look after things or not. I had imagined that the condition of the cars, whether or not things were obtainable, the smooth functioning of the business of removing wounded and sick from the dressing stations, hauling them back from the mountains to the clearing station, and then distributing them to the hospitals named on the papers, depended to a considerable extent on myself. Evidently, it did not matter whether I was there or not. "Has there been any trouble getting parts?" I asked the sergeant mechanic. Are we buffering here? YouTube isn't happy, but Twitch seems fine. Twitch is hiccuping too. Yeah, we're starting to drop frames. Hang tight. It doesn't seem too bad, but the monitor is not happy. Okay, I think we're back. Just in time to catch a bot. Okay, here we go. I think we're, well, maybe. I'm not seeing dropped frames, so I think it might be my down, not my up at this point. But honestly, I'd prefer it to be that way. Than having problems with the monitor is better than having problems with the source. All right, now where were we? Okay, yeah, it was right at the top of the page. "No, Signor Tenente. Where's the gasoline park now?" "At the same place." "Good," I said, and went back to the house and drank another bowl of coffee at the mess table. The coffee was a pale gray and sweet with condensed milk. Outside the window it was a lovely spring morning. There was that beginning of a feeling of dryness in the nose that meant the day would be hot later on. That day, I visited the posts in the mountains, and was back in town late in the afternoon. The whole thing seemed to run better while I was away. The offensive was going to start again, I heard. The division for which we worked were going to attack at a place up the river, and the major told me that I would see about the posts for during the attack. The attack would cross the river up above the narrow gorge and spread up the hillside. The posts for the cars would have to be as near the river as they could get, and keep covered. They would, of course, be selected by the infantry, but we were supposed to work it out. It was one of those things that gave you a false feeling of soldiering. I was very dusty and dirty, and went up to my room to wash. Rinaldi was sitting on the bed with a copy of Hugo's English grammar. He was dressed, wore his black boots, and his hair shone. "Splendid," he said when he saw me. "You will come with me to see Miss Barclay." "No. Yes, you will please come and make me a good impression of her." "All right. Wait till I get cleaned up. Wash up and come as you are." I washed, brushed my hair, and we started. "Wait a minute," Rinaldi said. "Perhaps we should have a drink." He opened his trunk and took out a bottle. "Not Strega," I said. "No, grappa." "All right." He poured 2 glasses and we touched them, first fingers extended. The grappa was very strong. "Another?" "All right," I said. We drank the second grappa. Rinaldi put away the bottle and we went down the stairs. It was hot, walking through the town, but the sun was starting to go down. It was very pleasant. The British hospital was a big villa built by Germans before the war. Miss Barclay was in the garden. Another nurse was with her. We saw their white uniforms through the trees and walked toward them. Rinaldi saluted. I saluted too, but more moderately. "How do you do?" Miss Barclay said. "You're not an Italian, are you?" "Oh, no." Rinaldi was talking with the other nurse. They were laughing. "What an odd thing to be in the Italian army." "It's not really the army. It's only the ambulance." "It's very odd, though. Why did you do it?" I don't know," I said. "There isn't always an explanation for everything." "Oh, isn't there? I was brought up to think there was." "That's awfully nice. Do we have to go on and talk this way?" "No," I said. "That's a relief, isn't it?" "What is the stick?" I asked. Miss Barclay was quite tall. She wore what seemed to me to be a nurse's uniform, was blonde, and had a tawny skin and grey eyes. I thought she was very beautiful. She was carrying a thin rattan stick, like a toy riding crop, bound in leather. "It belonged to a boy who was killed last year. I'm awfully sorry. He was a very nice boy. He was going to marry me. And he was killed in the Somme." It was a ghastly show. "Were you there?" "No." "I've heard about it," she said. "There's not really any war of that sort down here. They sent me the little stick. His mother sent it to me. They returned it with his things." "Had you been engaged long?" 8 years. We grew up together." "Why didn't you marry?" I don't know," she said. "I was a fool not to. I could have given him that anyway, but I thought it would be bad for him." "I see. Have you ever loved anyone?" "No," I said. We sat down on a bench, and I looked at her. "You have beautiful hair," I said. "Do you like it?" "Very much." "I was going to cut it all off when he died." "No." "I wanted to do something for him. You see, I didn't care about the other thing, and he could have had it all. He could have had anything he wanted if I had known. I would have married him or anything. I know all about it now. But then he wanted to go to war, and I didn't know. I did not say anything. I didn't know about anything then. I thought it would be worse for him. I thought perhaps he couldn't stand it, and then, of course, he was killed, and that was the end of it. I don't know. Oh, yes, she said. That's the end of it. We looked at Rinaldi, talking with the other nurse. What is her name? Ferguson. Helen Ferguson. Your friend is a doctor, isn't he? Yes, he's very good. That's splendid. You rarely find anyone any good this close to the front. This is close to the front, isn't it? Quite. It's a silly front, she said, but it's very beautiful. Are they going to have an offensive? Yes. Then we'll have to work. There's no work now. Have you done nursing long? Since the end of 15. I started when he did. I remember having a silly idea he might come to the hospital where I was, with a saber cut, I suppose, and a bandage around his head, shot through the shoulder, something picturesque. This is the picturesque front, I said. Yes, she said. People can't realize what France is like. If they did, it couldn't all go on. He didn't have a saber cut. It blew him all to bits. I didn't say anything. Do you suppose it will always go on? No. What's to stop it? It will crack somewhere. We'll crack. We'll crack in France. They can't go on doing things like the Somme and not crack. They won't crack here, I said. You think not? No. They did very well last summer. They may crack, she said. Anybody may crack. The Germans, too. No, she said. I think not. We went over toward Rinaldi and Miss Ferguson. You love Italy? Rinaldi asked Miss Ferguson in English. Oh, quite well. No understand, Rinaldi shook his head. Abbastanza bene, I translated. He shook his head. That is not good. You love England? Not too well. I'm Scotch, you see. Rinaldi looked at me blankly. She's Scotch, so she loves Scotland better than England, I said in Italian. Scotland is England. Oh, them's fighting words. I translated this for Miss Ferguson. Plus encore, said Miss Ferguson. Not really. Never. We do not like the English. Not like the English. Not like Miss Berkeley. Oh, that's different. You shouldn't take everything so literally. After a while, we said goodnight and left. Walking home, Rinaldi said, Miss Berkeley prefers you to me. That is very clear. But the little Scotchman is very nice. Yeah, very, I said. I had not noticed her. You like her? No, said Rinaldi. Alright, I guess I do need to look up grappa now, because if you say it's rocket fuel, it very well might be. Oh, that's a heavy brandy. Yeah. Between 35 and 60%. So, yeah, a 120 proof is indeed rocket fuel. Yes, you're right. Now I need to look up, what's the Strega? Cool. Oh, okay. It's a, yeah, it's an herbal liqueur. Yeah, no, that's also sounds less than appealing. I'll stick to my whiskeys and scotches and wines, I suppose. Gin. I guess I do drink some rocket fuel of my own. All right. Let's carry on. We can probably get through a fair bit of this chapter before we have to take our break. We have a rather firmer timeline now that we've got Big Brother Twitch looking over our shoulders. But that's just how things go, isn't it? All right, chapter 5. The next afternoon, I went to call on Miss Barclay again. She was not in the garden, and I went to the side door of the villa where the ambulances drove up. Inside, I saw the head nurse, who said Miss Barclay was on duty. "There's a war on, you know." I said I knew. "You're the American in the Italian army?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am." "How did you happen to do that? Why didn't you join up with us?" "I don't know," I said. "Could I join now?" "I'm afraid not now. Tell me, why did you join up with the Italians?" "I was in Italy," I said, "and I spoke Italian." "Oh," she said, I'm learning it. It's a beautiful language." "Somebody said you should be able to learn it in 2 weeks." "Oh, I'll not learn it in 2 weeks. I've studied it for months now. You may come and see her after 7 o'clock if you wish. She'll be off then. But don't bring a lot of Italians." "Not even for the beautiful language?" "No, nor for the beautiful uniforms." "Good evening," I said. "Arrivederci, tenente." "Arrivedera." I saluted and went out. It was impossible to salute foreigners as an Italian without embarrassment. The Italian salute never seemed made for export. The day had been... You know what? Before we go on, I need to look that up. Italian World War I salute. Seems fine. I guess the Italian salute is just open hand, or hand to cap, or open palm. So it's kind of like the salute that is more traditionally acceptable. They're not doing the bad sort of salute. Yeah, I don't know. All right. The day had been hot. I had been up the river to the bridgehead at Plava. It was there that the offensive was to begin. It had been impossible to advance on the far side the year before, because there was only one road leading down from the pass to the pontoon bridge, and it was under machine gun and shell fire for nearly a mile. It was not wide enough either to carry all the transport for an offensive, and the Austrians could make a shambles out of it. That's fair. But the Italians had crossed and spread out a little way on the far side to hold about 1.5 miles on the Austrian side of the river. It was a nasty place, and the Austrians should not have let them hold it. I suppose it was mutual tolerance, because the Austrians still kept a bridgehead further down the river. The Austrian trenches were above, on the hillside, only a few yards from the Italian lines. There had been a little town. It was all a rubble. There was what was left of a railway station, and a smashed permanent bridge that could not be repaired and used because it was in plain sight. I went along the narrow road down toward the river, left the car at the dressing station under the hill, crossed the pontoon bridge, which was protected by a shoulder of the mountain, and went through the trenches in the smashed down town, and along the edge of the slope. Everybody was in the dugouts. There were racks of rockets standing to be touched off to call for help from the artillery, or to signal with if the telephone wires were cut. It was quiet, hot and dirty. I looked across the wire at the Austrian lines. Nobody was in sight. I had a drink with a captain that I knew in one of the dugouts and went back across the bridge. A new wide road was being finished that would go over the mountain and zigzag down to the bridge. When this road was finished, the offensive would start. It came down through the forest in sharp turns. The system was to bring everything down the new road and take the empty trucks, carts, and loaded ambulances and all returning traffic up the old narrow road. The dressing station was on the Austrian side of the river, under the edge of the hill, and the stretcher bearers would bring the wounded back across the pontoon bridge. It would be the same when the offensive started. As far as I could make out, the last mile or so of the new road, where it started to level out, would be able to be shelled steadily by the Austrians. It looked as though it might be a mess. But I found a place where the cars would be sheltered after they had passed that last bad-looking bit, and could wait for the wounded to be brought across the pontoon bridge. I would have liked to drive over the new road, but it was not yet finished. It looked wide and well made, with a good grade, and the turns looked very impressive, where you could see them through openings in the forest on the mountainside. The cars would be all right with their good metal-to-metal brakes, and anyway, coming down, they would not be loaded. I drove back up the narrow road. Metal-to-metal brakes is good. Whew. Sign of the times there. 2 carabinieri held the car up. A shell had fallen, and while we waited, 3 others fell up the road. They were 77s, and came with a whistling rush of air, a hard, bright burst and flash, and then gray smoke that blew across the road. The carabinieri waved us to go on. Passing where the shells had landed, I avoided the small broken places, and smelled the high explosive and the smell of blasted clay and stone, and freshly shattered flint. I drove back to Gorizia and our villa, and, as I said, went to call on Miss Barclay, who was on duty. At dinner, I ate very quickly and left for the villa, where the British had their hospital. It was really very large and beautiful. There were fine trees in the grounds. Miss Barclay was sitting on a bench in the garden. Miss Ferguson was with her. They seemed glad to see me, and in a little while Miss Ferguson excused herself and went away. "I'll leave you two," she said. "You get along very well without me." "Oh, don't go, Helen," Miss Barclay said. "I'd really rather. I must write some letters." "Good night," I said. "Good night, Mr. Henry." "Don't write anything that will bother the censor." "Oh, don't worry. I'm to write about what a beautiful place we live in and how brave the Italians are." "That way you'll be decorated." "Oh, that will be nice. Good night, Catherine." "I'll see you in a little while," Miss Barclay said. Miss Ferguson walked away in the dark. "She's nice," I said. "Oh, yes, she's very nice. She's a nurse." "Aren't you a nurse?" "Oh, no, I'm something called a VAD. We work very hard, but no one trusts us." "Why not?" "They don't trust us when there's nothing going on. When there's really work, they trust us." "What is the difference?" "A nurse is like a doctor. It takes a long time to be a VAD. It takes a long time to be. A VAD is a shortcut." "I see. The Italians didn't want women so near the front, so we're all on very special behavior. We don't go out." "I can come here, though?" "Oh, yes. We're not cloistered." "Let's drop the war." "It's very hard. There's no place to drop it." "Let's drop it anyway." "All right." We looked at each other in the dark. I thought she was very beautiful, and I took her hand, and she let me take it, and I held it and put my arm around under her arm. "No," she said. I kept my arm where it was. "Why not?" "No." "Yes," I said. "Please." I leaned forward in the dark to kiss her, and there was a sharp, stinging flash. She had slapped my face hard. Her hand had hit my nose and eyes, and tears came in my eyes from the reflex. "I'm so sorry," she said. I felt I had a certain advantage. "No, don't be sorry. Slap his ass." "You were quite right." "I'm dreadfully sorry," she said. I just couldn't stand the nurse's evening off aspect of it. I didn't mean to hurt you. I did hurt you, didn't I? She was looking at me in the dark. I was angry and yet certain, seeing it all ahead like the moves in a chess game. You did exactly right, I said. I don't mind at all. Poor man. You see, I've been leading a sort of funny life, and I never even talk English, and then you are so very beautiful. I looked at her. You don't need to say a lot of nonsense. I said I was sorry. We do get along. Yes, I said. We've gotten away from the war. She laughed. It was the first time I'd ever heard her laugh. I watched her face. You are sweet, she said. No, I'm not. Yes, you are a dear. I'd be glad to kiss you if you don't mind. I looked in her eyes and put my arm around her, and as I had before, and kissed her. I kissed her hard and held her tight and tried to open her lips. They were closed tight. My man, it's first date. Don't go for tongue. What year you think it is? I was still angry, and as I held her suddenly, she shivered. I held her close against me and could feel her heart beating in my lips, and her lips opened and her head went back against my hand, and she was crying on my shoulder. Oh, darling, she said, you will be good to me, won't you? What the hell, I thought. I stroked her hair and patted her shoulder. She was crying. You will, won't you? She looked up at me. Because we're going to have a strange life. After a while, I walked with her to the door of the villa, and she went in, and I walked home. Back at the villa, I went upstairs to the room. Rinaldi was lying on his bed. He looked at me. So, you make any progress with Miss Barclay? We are friends. You have that pleasant air of a dog in heat. I did not understand the word. Of what? He explained. You, I said, have that pleasant air of a dog who... Stop it, he said. In a little while. He would say insulting things. He laughed. Good night, he said. Good night, little puppy. I knocked over his candle with a pillow and got into bed in the dark. Rinaldi picked up the candle, lit it, and went on reading. All right, that catches us to the beginning of chapter 6. And we have an ad break coming up in, it says it needs it in 2.5 minutes, so we may just kick it off a little early. But we can actually just sit and talk a little bit about the book so far, because it's been a good one so far. There's a little bit of the tension of the looming war, but in the same sort of way that was kind of peculiar to World War I, where if you weren't in one of the hot spots, or even if you were in one of the hot spots, but not at an active push, it really didn't feel much like a war at all. The sort of opposing camps were overlooking each other in range, and yes, there was some shelling going on, but not a whole lot of real active conflict. Less of the style of war that people that are familiar with, like World War II, will run into. But if you're familiar with it, the whole idea of the trench warfare that was used in World War I was a lot more, you set a position, move a couple yards one way or the other. There's a few moments of hectic, and if you're not in one of the actual really hot fronts, it was a lot less hostile than even modern war tends to be. So it's an interesting view. Life goes on, but in a somewhat more regimented style. And the way Hemingway's describing it here is interesting so far. You're sort of wondering whether things are going to... or waiting for the shoe to drop, waiting for things to fall apart. Because it seems way too peaceful right now. Yeah, exactly. You're in a country that's not directly on the front, but you're you're not where the fighting is happening, but you're where it could break out. So it's interesting how it can go through. World War I especially was weird like that. it's like it was the shifting of starting to modernize war. We're getting away from like the line infantry and getting into a more modern feel, higher tech, more lethality, but still not quite all the way. All right, our ad break is starting in about 10 seconds, so let's go ahead and take our break now, and I'll flip back off of our Be Right Back screen when we're back. All right, thanks, guys. All right, we are back. Yeah, I don't think it actually served us any ads. I'm all right with that, but I figure it's better that we get in the routine. That way, if they do decide to start serving us some, we won't be surprised. All right, so I did make a slight change while we were out. All this talk of Italy has me feeling like a red. Unfortunately, I don't have any Italian wines, but wine's wine. I always keep a box of Cab around just for nights like this. All right. See, a Negroni would be good too. I don't usually have this fixings on hand. All right, so let's jump back in where we left off. Right at the start of chapter 6. I was away for 2 days at the posts. When I got home, it was too late, and I did not see Miss Barclay until the next evening. She was not in the garden, and I had to wait in the office of the hospital until she came down. There were many marble busts on painted wooden pillars along the walls of the room they used for an office. The hall, too, with the office opened on, was lined with them. They had the complete marble quality of all looking alike. Sculpture had always seemed a dull business. Still, bronzes looked like something, but marble busts all looked like a cemetery. There was one fine cemetery, though, the one at Pisa. Genoa was the place to see the bad marbles. This had been the villa of a very wealthy German, and the busts must have cost him plenty. I wondered who had done them, and how much he got. I tried to make out whether they were members of the family or what, but they were all uniformly classical. You could not tell anything about them. I sat on a chair and held my cap. We were supposed to wear steel helmets even in Gorizia, but they were uncomfortable and too bloody theatrical in town, where the civilian inhabitants had not been evacuated. I wore one when we went up to the posts and carried an English gas mask. We were just beginning to get some of them. They were a real mask. Also, we were required to wear an automatic pistol, even doctors and sanitary officers. I felt it against the back of the chair. You were liable to arrest if you did not have one worn in plain sight. Rinaldi carried a holster stuffed with toilet paper. I wore a real one. It felt like a gunman, until I practiced firing it. It was an Astra 7.65 caliber, with a short barrel, and it jumped so sharply when you let it off that there was no question of hitting anything. I practiced with it, holding below the target and trying to master the jerk of the ridiculous short barrel until I could hit within a yard of where I aimed at 20 paces, and then the ridiculousness of carrying a pistol at all came over me, and I soon forgot it, and carried it flopping against the small of my back with no feeling at all, except a vague sort of shame when I met English-speaking people. I sat now in the chair, and an orderly of some sort looked at me disapprovingly from behind the desk while I looked at the marble floor, the pillars with the marble busts, and the frescoes on the wall, and waited for Miss Barclay. The frescoes were not bad. Any frescoes were good when they started to peel and flake off. See, yeah, there you go. The classics were indeed usually painted, but it didn't. The paint didn't last nearly so long as the marble itself. I saw Catherine Barclay coming down the hall and stood up. She did not seem tall walking toward me, but she looked very lovely. "Good evening, Mr. Henry," she said. "How do you do?" I said. The orderly was listening behind the desk. "Shall we sit here or go out in the garden?" "Let's go out. It's much cooler." I walked behind her, out into the garden. The orderly looked after us. When we were out on the gravel drive, she said, "Where have you been?" "I've been out on post." "You couldn't have sent me a note?" "No," I said. "Not very well. I thought I was coming back." "You ought to have let me know, darling." We were off the driveway, walking under the trees. I took her hands, then stopped and kissed her. Isn't there anywhere we can go? No, she said. We have to just walk here. You've been away a long time. This is the 3rd day, but I'm back now. She looked at me. And you do love me? Yes. You did say you loved me, didn't you? Yes. I lied. I love you. I had not said it before. And you call me Catherine? Catherine. We walked on away and were stopped under a tree. Say, I've come back to Catherine in the night. I've come back to Catherine in the night. Oh, darling, you have come back, haven't you? Yes. I love you so, and it's been awful. You won't go away? No, I'll always come back. Oh, I love you so. Put your hand there again. It's not been away. I turned her so I could see her face when I kissed her, and I saw that her eyes were shut. I kissed both of her shut eyes. I thought she was probably a little crazy. It was all right if she was. I did not care what I was getting into. This was better than going every evening to the house for officers where the girls climbed all over you and put your cap on backward as a sign of affection between their trips upstairs with brother officers. I knew I did not love Catherine Barclay, or had any idea of loving her. This was a game, like bridge, in which you said things instead of playing cards. Like bridge, you had to pretend you were playing for money, or playing for some stakes. Nobody had mentioned what the stakes were. It was all right with me. I wish there was some place we could go, I said. I was experiencing the masculine difficulty of making love very long standing up. There isn't any place, she said. She came back from wherever she had been. We might just sit there for a little while. We sat on the flat stone bench, and I held Catherine Barclay's hand. She would not let me put my arm around her. Are you very tired? She asked. No. She looked down at the grass. This is a rotten game we play, isn't it? What game? Don't be dull. I'm not, on purpose. You're a nice boy, she said, and you play it as well as you know how, but it's a rotten game. Do you always know what people think? Not always, but I do with you. You don't have to pretend you love me. That's over for the evening. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? But I do love you. Please, let's not lie when we don't have to. We had a very fine little show, and I'm all right now. You see, I'm not mad, and I'm not grown off. It's only a little sometimes. I pressed her hand. Dear Catherine. It sounds very funny now, Catherine. You don't pronounce it very much alike, but you're very nice. You're a very good boy. That's what the priest said. Yes, you're very good. And you will come and see me? Of course. And you don't have to say you love me. That's all over for a while. She stood up and put out her hand. Good night. I wanted to kiss her. No, she said. I'm awfully tired. Kiss me, though, I said. I'm awfully tired, darling. Kiss me. Do you want to very much? Yes. We kissed, and she broke away suddenly. No. Good night, please, darling. We walked to the door, and I saw her go in and down the hall. I liked to watch her move. She went on down the hall. I went on home. It was a hot night, and there was a good deal going on up in the mountains. I watched the flashes on San Gabriel. I stopped in front of the Villa Rosa. The shutters were up, but it was still going on inside. Somebody was singing. I went on home. Ronaldo came in while I was undressing. "Aha!" he said. "It does not go so well. Baby is puzzled." "Where have you been?" "At the Villa Rosa." "It was very edifying, baby. We all sang. Where have you been?" Calling on the British." "Thank God I did not become involved with the British." This budding relationship of theirs is a little weird. I'm not really gonna judge too much, because I mean, it's a war. They're reasonably young. People do stupid things. But it's kind of weird nonetheless. Like, I know I made some questionable decisions when we were on a timetable, but yeah. And yeah, you're right. War is funny like that. It drives people to extremes, whether it be interpersonal extremes or whatever the case may be. So, I'm not in a position to judge, but I can observe that this is not likely healthy for either of them. He's doing as men will do, and she is getting over grieving, but also trying to find something of her own in all this. So, we'll have to see how this continues to shake up. I know their relationship is central to the book. It really is the entire plot of the book. So, it's expected for things to be a little weird. Otherwise, what's the plot? But we'll see how it will develop from here. All right. Chapter 7. I came back the next afternoon from our first mountain post and stopped the car at the Smistimento. Simba, dude, don't sit in front of the keyboard, please. Like, you can sit around here, that's fine, but I just don't want you pressing buttons. I came back the next afternoon from our first mountain post and stopped the car at the Smistimento, where the wounded and sick were sorted by their papers, and the papers marked for the different hospitals. I had been driving, and I sat in the car, and the driver took the papers in. It was a hot day, and the sky was very bright and blue, and the road was white and dusty. I sat in the high seat of the Fiat, and thought about nothing. A regiment went by in the road, and I watched them pass. The men were hot and sweating. Some wore their steel helmets, but most of them carried them slung from their packs. Most of the helmets were too big, and came down almost over the ears of the men who wore them. The officers all wore helmets, better-fitting helmets. It was half the Brigata Basilicata. I identified them by their red and white striped collar mark. There were stragglers going by long after the regiment had passed. Men who could not keep up with their platoons. They were sweaty, dusty, and tired. Some looked pretty bad. A soldier came along after the last of the stragglers. He was walking with a limp. He stopped and sat down beside the road, and I got down and went over. "What's the matter?" He looked at me, then stood up. "I'm going on." "What's the trouble?" "Or what's wrong with your leg?" "It's on my leg. I got a rupture." "Why don't you ride with the transport?" I asked. "Why don't you go to the hospital?" "It won't let me. The lieutenant said I slipped the truss on purpose." "Let me feel it." "It's a way out." "Which side is it on?" "Here." I felt it. "Cough," I said. "I'm afraid it'll make it bigger. It's twice as big as it was this morning." "Sit down," I said. "As soon as I get the papers on these wounded, I'll take you along the road and drop you with your medical officers." "You'll say I did it on purpose." "They can't do anything," I said. "It's not a wound. You've had it before, haven't you?" "I lost the truss." They'll send you to a hospital. Can't I stay here, Tenente? No, I haven't any papers for you. The driver came out of the door with the papers for the wounded in the car. 4 for 105, 2 for 132, he said. There were hospitals beyond the river. You drive, I said. I helped the soldier with the rupture up on the seat with us. You speak English? He asked. Sure. How do you like this goddamn war? Rotten. I say it's rotten. Jesus Christ. I say it's rotten. Were you in the States? Sure. In Pittsburgh. I knew you was American. Don't I talk Italian good enough? I knew you was an American, all right. Another American. Another American, said the driver in Italian, looking at the hernia man. Listen, Lieutenant. Do you have to take me to that regiment? Yes. Because the captain doctor knew I had this rupture. I threw away the goddamn truss so it would be bad, and I wouldn't have it to go to the line again. I see. Couldn't you take me no place else? If it was closer to the front, I could take you to a first medical post. But back here, you've got to have papers. If I go back, they'll make me get operated on, and they'll put me in the line all the time. I thought it over. You wouldn't want to go in the line all the time, would you? No. Jesus Christ, ain't this a goddamn war? Listen, I said. You get out and fall down by the road and get a bump on your head, and I'll pick you up on the way back and take you to a hospital. We'll stop by the road here. Aldo. We stopped at the side of the road. I helped him down. I'll be right here, Lieutenant, he said. So long, I said. He went on and passed the regiment. We went on and passed the regiment about a mile ahead, then crossed the river, cloudy with snow water, and running fast through the spiles of the bridge. So, to ride along the road across the plain and deliver the wounded at the 2 hospitals. I drove coming back and went fast with the empty car to find the man from Pittsburgh. First, we passed the regiment, hotter and slower than ever. Then the stragglers. Then we saw a horse ambulance stopped by the road. 2 men were lifting the hernia man to put him in. They had come back for him. He shook his head at me. His helmet was off and his forehead was bleeding below the hairline. His nose was skinned and there was dust on the bloody patch in the dust in his hair. The bump, Lieutenant, he said. Nothing to do. They come back for me. We were just talking about MASH the other day, weren't we? I don't remember when it was. This is very much giving MASH vibes. Particularly where he's trying to arrange for the kid to get a little extra hurt. I could go for some Hawkeye. Man, I could go for some Hawkeye. All right, so let's see. Let's continue on here. When I got back to the villa, it was 5 o'clock, and I went out where we washed the cars to take a shower. Then I made out my report in my room, sitting in my trousers and an undershirt in front of the open window. In 2 days, the offensive was to start. I would go wash the cars to Plava. I'd go with the cars to Plava. It was a long time since I had written to the States, and I knew I should write. I'd let it go so long that it was almost impossible to write now. There's nothing to write about. I sent a couple of Arme Zona di Gara postcards, crossing out everything except I am well. That should handle them. Those postcards would be very fine in America. Strange and mysterious. This was a strange, mysterious war zone, but I supposed it was quite well run and grim compared to the other wars with the Austrians. The Austrian army was created to give Napoleon victories. Any Napoleon. I wish we had a Napoleon, but instead, per il generale Cordona, a fat and prosperous, and Vittorio Emanuele, the tiny man with the long, thin neck and the goat beard. Over on the right, they had the Duke of Aosta. Maybe he was too good-looking to be a great general, but he looked like a man. Lots of them would have liked him to be king. He looked like a king. He was the king's uncle and commanded the Third Army. We were in the Second Army. There were some British batteries up with the Third Army. I had met 2 gunners from that lot in Milan. They were very nice, and we had a big evening. They were big and shy and embarrassed, and very appreciative together of anything that happened. I wish that I was with the British. It would have been much simpler. Still, I would probably have been killed. Not in this ambulance business. Yes, even in the ambulance business. British ambulance drivers were killed sometimes. Well, I knew I would not be killed, not in this war. It didn't have anything to do with me. It seemed no more dangerous to me, myself, than war in the movies. I wish to God it was over, though. Maybe it would finish this summer. Maybe the Austrians would crack. They'd always cracked in other wars. What was the matter with this war? Everybody said the French were through. Rinaldi said that the French had mutinied and troops marched on Paris. I asked him what happened, and he said, oh, they stopped them. I wanted to go to Austria without war. I wanted to go to the Black Forest. I wanted to go to the Harz Mountains. Where were the Harz Mountains, anyway? They were fighting in the Carpathians. I did not want to go there anyway. It might be good or not. It might be good, though. I could go to Spain if there was no war. The sun was going down and the day was cooling off. After supper, I would go and see Catherine and Barclay. I wished she were here now. I wish I were in Milan with her. I would like to eat at the Cova, and then walk down the Via Monzoni in the hot evening and cross over and turn off along the canal and go to the hotel with Catherine Barclay. Maybe she would. Maybe she would pretend that I was her boy who was killed. And we would go in the front door, and the porter would take off his cap, and I would stop at the concierge's desk and ask for the key, and she would stand by the elevator. And we would get in the elevator, and it would go up very slowly, clicking at all the floors, and then our floor. And the boy would open the door and stand there, and she would step out. And I would step out, and we would walk down the hall, and I would put the key in the door and open it and go in and then take down the telephone. I asked them to send a bottle of Capri Bianca in a silver bucket full of ice. You would hear the ice against the pail coming down the corridor, and the boy would knock, and I would say, leave it outside the door, please. Because we would not wear any clothes. It was so hot. And the window open, and the swallows flying over the roofs of the houses, and when it was dark afterward, and you went to the window, very small bats hunting over the houses, and close down over the trees. We would drink the Capri, and the door locked, and it hot, and only a sheet, and the whole night we both love each other, all night in the hot night in Milan. That was how it ought to be. I would eat quickly and go see Catherine Barclay. Man's losing himself in his imagination there. Not that I don't understand it, but whew, that's a very detailed trip through the imagination. They talked too much at the mess, and I drank wine because tonight we were not all brothers, unless I drank a little and talked with the priest about Archbishop Ireland, who was, it seemed, a nobleman, and with whose injustice the injustices he had received, and in which I participated as an American, and of which I had never heard, I feigned acquaintance. It would have been impolite not to have known something of them when I had listened to such a splendid explanation of their causes, which were, after all, it seemed, misunderstandings. I thought he had a fine name, and he came from Minnesota, which made a lovely name. Ireland of Minnesota, Ireland of Wisconsin, Ireland of Michigan. What made it pretty was that it sounded like an island. No, that wasn't it. There was more to it than that. Yes, Father, that is true, Father. Perhaps, Father. No, Father. Well, maybe. Yes, Father. You know more about it than I do, Father. The priest was good, but dull. The officers were not good, but dull. The king was good, but dull. The wine was bad, but not dull. It took the enamel off your teeth and left it on the roof of your mouth. You ever had a wine that has turned mostly into vinegar? That's how I imagine that. Gone a little too far sour. And the priest was locked up, Roca said, because they found the 3% bonds on his person. It was in France, of course. Here, they never would have arrested him. He denied all knowledge of the 5% bonds. It took place at Béziers. I was there. And reading of it in the paper. Went to the jail and asked to see the priest. It was quite evident he had stolen the bonds. I don't believe a word of this, Rinaldi said. Just as you like, Roca said. But I'm telling you it for our priest here. It is very informative. He's a priest. He will appreciate it. The priest smiled. Go on, he said. I am listening. Of course, some of the bonds were not accounted for, but the priest had all of the 3% bonds and several local obligations. I forget exactly what they were, so I went to the jail. Now, this is the point of the story, and I stood outside his cell, and I said as though I were going to confession. Bless me, Father, for you have sinned. There was great laughter from everybody. And what did he say? Asked the priest. Roca ignored this and went on to explain the joke to me. You see the point, don't you? It seemed it was a very funny joke, if you understood it properly. They poured me more wine, and I told the story about the English private soldier who was placed under the shower bath. Then the major told the story of the 11 Czechoslovaks and the Hungarian corporal. After some more wine, I told the story of the jockey who found the penny. The major said there was an Italian story, something like that, about the duchess who could not sleep at night. At this point, the priest left, and I told the story about the traveling salesman who arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning at Marseille, when the mistral was blowing. The major said he had heard a report that I could drink. I denied this. He said it was true, and by the corpse of Bacchus he would test whether it was true or not. Not Bacchus, I said. Not Bacchus. Yes, Bacchus, he said. I should drink cup for cup and glass for glass with Bassi. Filippo Vincenza. Bassi said, no, that was no test because he had already drunk twice as much as I. I said that was a foul lie. And Bacchus or no Bacchus, Filippo Vincenza, Bassi or Bassi Filippo Vincenza had never touched a drop all evening. And what was his name anyway? He said was my name, Federico Enrico or Enrico Federico. And I said, let the best man win. Bacchus barred. And the major started us with red wine in mugs. Halfway through the wine, I did not want any more. I remembered where I was going. Bassi wins, I said. He's a better man than I am. I have to go. He does, really, said Rinaldi. He has the rendezvous. I know all about it. I have to go. Another night, said Bassi. Another night when you feel stronger. He slapped me on the shoulder. There were lighted candles on the table. All the officers were very happy. Good night, gentlemen, I said. Rinaldi went out with me. We stood outside the door on the patch, and he said, you'd better not get up and go up there drunk. I'm not drunk, Rillian, really. You'd better chew some coffee. Nonsense. I'll get some, baby. You walk up and down. He came back with a handful of roasted coffee beans. Chew those, baby, and God be with you. Bacchus, I said. I'll walk down with you. I'm perfectly all right. We walked along together through the town, and I chewed the coffee. At the gate of the driveway that led up to the British villa, Rinaldi said good night. Good night, I said. Why don't you come in? He shook his head. No, he said. I like the simpler pleasures. Thank you for the coffee beans. Nothing, baby, nothing. I started down the driveway. The outlines of the cypresses that lined it were sharp and clear. I looked back and saw Rinaldi standing watching me and waved to him. I sat in the reception hall of the villa, waiting for Catherine Barclay to come down. Someone was coming down the hallway. I stood up. It was not Catherine. It was Miss Ferguson. Hello, she said. Catherine asked me to tell you she was sorry she couldn't see you this evening. I'm so sorry. I hope she's not ill. She's not awfully well. Will you tell her how sorry I am? Yes, I will. Do you think it would be any good to try and see her tomorrow? Yes, I do. Thank you very much, I said. Good night. I went out the door and suddenly I felt lonely and empty. I had treated seeing Catherine very lightly. I had gotten somewhat drunk and had nearly forgotten to come, but when I could not see her there, I was feeling lonely and hollow. All right, that brings us to the end of chapter 7. I actually kind of liked that sequence of the drinking with the officers. It felt rather haphazard and thrown together and just slapdash, but it's if you've ever been out drinking with almost strangers, it feels a lot like that. Like, there might be some rumor, there might be some this or that, but really, it's just clowning around. There's no lingering connections. You may not know people's names, but that's half the fun. It was put together and presented very well. All in good fun, and no hard feelings, none of that, just some just good old back and forth. And also, now that we've seen that he was not able to meet up with Catherine, it seems our lad may have caught some feelings after all. Ha ha ha. We'll see. We'll have to see how things develop. All right. Chapter 8. The next afternoon, we heard there was to be an attack up the river that night, that we were to take 4 cars there. Nobody knew anything about it, although they all spoke with great positiveness and strategical knowledge. I was riding in the first car, and as we passed the entry to the British hospital, I told the driver to stop. The other cars pulled up. I got out, told the driver to go on, and that if we had not caught up to them at the junction of the road to Corman's, to wait there. I hurried up the driveway and inside the reception hall, and I asked for Miss Barclay. Yeah, I will definitely agree. When you're young, it's more fun to party with strangers. When I just started drinking and out and about on the town, I would just sort of settle down at a crowded bar or find a table that had a seat open and insinuate yourself into a group, and it's like, oh, all right, you got some new friends for the evening. I can't really do that much these days. It hits a little bit different when an old man sits down at the table with you. She's on duty. Could I see her just for a moment? They sent an orderly to see, and she came back with him. I stopped to ask if you were better. They told me you were on duty, so I asked to see you. I'm quite well, she said. I think the heat knocked me over yesterday. I have to go. I'll just step out the door a minute. Yeah, absolutely. While I can still hold my drink, it just doesn't sound, it's not as fun as it used to be. Like, I'd much rather just, sit and sip on something for a few hours, rather than trying to keep up with the rest of the table. You put on a front. Especially, I used to wait tables at a Japanese restaurant, and I was the only white guy on staff, and so we'd go out, and of course, I had to be the heavyweight. That's just it was accepted. There was a reputation to uphold, so they'd pull out pitchers and they'd have their little half a drink, and I'd have to finish the pitcher, and there was a few of those throughout the courses of the night. So yeah, and yes, the noise and the nonsense is so much of it, and even when I was on the younger side, I preferred the more quieter off-campus bars. Very rarely would I wander into like the campus area bars, and those are a little much for me. I'd much rather have a quiet nook and a hole in the wall. Where were we? I'll step out the door in a minute. And you're all right? I asked outside. Yes, darling. Are you coming tonight? No. I'm leaving now for a show up above Plava. A show? I don't think it's anything. And you'll be back? Tomorrow. She was unclasping something from her neck. She put it in my hand. It's a St. Anthony, she said. And come, tomorrow night. You're not a Catholic, are you? No, but they say a St. Anthony's very useful. I'll take care of him for you. Goodbye. No, she said, not goodbye. All right. Be a good boy. And be careful. No, you can't kiss me here. You can't. All right. I looked back and saw her standing on the steps. She waved, and I kissed my hand and held it out. She waved again, and then I was out of the driveway and climbing up into the seat of the ambulance, and we started. St. Anthony was in a little white metal capsule. I opened the capsule and spilled him out into my hand. St. Anthony, said the driver. Yes. I have one. His right hand left the wheel. And opened a button on his tunic, and pulled it out from under his shirt. See? I put my St. Anthony back in the capsule, spilled the thin gold chain together, and put it all in my breast pocket. You don't wear him? No. It's better to wear him. That's what it's for. All right, I said. I undid the clasp of my gold chain and put it around my neck and clasped it. The saint hung down on the outside of my uniform, and I undid the throat of my tunic, unbuttoned the shirt collar, and dropped him in under the shirt. I felt him in his metal box against my chest while we drove. Then I forgot about him. After I was wounded, I never found him. Someone probably got it at one of the dressing stations. Well, that's some foreshadowing. What is St. Anthony for? I'm very not Catholic. Patron saint of lost things. Really? Okay, travelers make sense. So the irony of Saint Anthony being the patron saint of lost things and him losing the necklace or the amulet or the whichever it's going to be that's fantastic, actually. Oh, and finding a spouse. Okay. Yeah. Patron saint of lost items, people, and spiritual goods. Invoked to help find misplaced belongings. I do not. I am very not Catholic, so that is part of it, but now I'm going to have to look that up. Oh, no! Oh, that stings. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Okay, okay. Oh, I've got a spot. I've got a spot saved in hell. That's all right. They're keeping a spot at the bar for me down there. All right, where were we? Yeah, there we go. We'll be in good company. We drove fast when we were over the bridge, and soon we saw the dust of the other cars ahead down the road. The road curved, and we saw the 3 cars looking quite small, the dust rising from the wheels and going off through the trees. We caught them and passed them and turned off on a road that climbed up into the hills. Driving in convoy is not unpleasant if you were the first car, and I settled back in the seat and watched the country. We were in the foothills on the near side of the river, and as the road mounted, there were the high mountains off to the north, with snow still on their tops. I looked back and saw the 3 cars all climbing, spaced by the interval of their dust. We passed a long column of loaded mules, the drivers walking along beside the mules, wearing red fezzes. They were bersaglieri. Beyond the mule train, the road was empty. We climbed through the hills and then went down over the shoulder of a long hill into a river valley. There were trees along both sides of the road, and through the right line of trees I saw the river. The clear water, vast and shallow. The river was low, and there were stretches of sand and pebbles with a narrow channel of water, and sometimes the water spread like a sheen over the pebbly bed. Close to the bank I saw deep pools, the water blue like the sky. I saw arched stone bridges over the river where tracks turned off from the road. We passed stone farmhouses with pear trees, candelabraed against their south walls, and low stone walls in the field. The road went up the valley a long way, and then we turned off and commenced to climb into the hills again. The road climbed steeply, going up and back and forth through the chestnut woods to level, finally, along a ridge. I could look down and through the woods and see, far below, with the sun on it, the line of the river that separated the 2 armies. We went along the rough, new military road that followed the crest of the ridge, and I looked to the north at the 2 ranges of mountains, green and dark to the snow line, and then white and lovely in the sun. Then, as the road mounted along the ridge, I saw a 3rd range of mountains, higher snow mountains that looked chalky white and furrowed, with strange plains. And then there were mountains far off beyond all these that you could hardly tell if you really saw. Those were the Austrians' mountains, and we had nothing like them. Ahead, there was a rounded turn-off in the road to the right, and looking down, I could see the road dropping through the trees. There were troops on this road, and motor trucks and mules with mountain guns, and as we went down, keeping to the side, I could see the river far down below. The line of the ties and rails running around it, the old bridge where the railway crossed to the other side, and across, under a hill beyond the river, the broken houses of the little town that was to be taken. It was nearly dark when we came down and turned into the main road that ran beside the river. All right, that brings us to the end of chapter 8. Let me look ahead and see how long this next chapter is. Oh, this one's kind of a doozy, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I'm rather certain that we will not be able to get through that before our scheduled time. And that would leave us susceptible to another ad break partway through it. So, this will be a good time to wrap up a little bit early. But that means we can just sit and talk for a little bit. That's never a bad thing, right? So, our return to Hemingway. It's cozy, isn't it? Hemingway has a certain way with his prose. It feels conversational. It's not overly complicated, but it's not really pretentious either. It's just sort of flows. Kind of feels like you're listening to someone tell their story, which, I mean, really all of his books are sort of first-person accounts of someone's experiences as they typically wander through Europe. At least both of the books that we've read so far have been wanderings through Europe, so there's that. Hemingway has a type. So, but he does it very well. I'm pleased with it so far. It's cozy. It's like some fresh socks out of the dryer, you know? You're just like, all right, yeah, it just feels right. Exactly. It's like, we don't need to worry that the character that we're following is probably the worst of the worst. He's not a Henry. He's not an honorary Henry either. Not an Emile. Real life Emiles, totally fine with. Emile from Demian, head was so far up his own ass, good lord. So yeah, some of the side characters in Hemingway can be awful people. Remember the very spirited, feisty side character in Sun Also Rises? That was not the best person, but the main character wasn't so bad. The narrator wasn't so bad. He just sort of went along with things. And I get the same sort of vibe here. I think a lot of Hemingway's works, particularly this, and even in Sun Also Rises, I think it comes down to not so much autobiographical, but he inserts himself in it. Like, there are flaws, but it feels comfortable. Like, he's not the protagonist. He's not an antagonist. He's sort of a party to everything happening around and just letting you know what's going on. Although in this one so far, he seems to be more of a protagonist, sort of. But really, not so much in a narrative, dynamic protagonist sort of way. No, he's just sort of following events as they're happening. The world is bigger than this story. In World War I, the Great War, is bigger than this small story within it. It fits. It fits. Catherine is kind of messed up. Let's be real. Catherine has got issues. She did just lose her previous fiance. And is dealing with it in an interesting way. But the two of them are moving very, very quickly. There might be some off-screen events happening on that were a little less, or that go a little ways to explaining their dynamic, but there's some flaws there as well. You're right. The main character here has his own flaws, but in a very believable, very human way. A character without flaws belongs in the gospel. This is not one of those. And it makes it a much more believable story, a much more believable narrative. So, I'm happy to see this play through. I'm happy that we've come back to Hemingway after a year and some change. I wish there was a little bit more from his library to go through. Most of the other things that I've seen are short stories, which can be fun visits, but they're not really the same, are they? After tonight, we're about 14% of the way through this first book. So we've got a fair bit ahead of us still. And I think by the end of it, it'll be a lot like an old friend. They're really the best thing you can say about an author, is that they just feel like one of the guys. And Hemingway does that better than most. A lot of the classics, the classical authors, the literary primarchs, feel very unapproachable. But Hemingway is just a man. And I love that about him. I love that about his art, about how things are coming through. All right, I just got noticed that we've got about 5 minutes till an ad break, so we're going to go ahead and make sure we do our raid before then. We've got a little bit of time still before that, so let's shift out of the reading nook, though. We've had some yap going on, and so far so good. But yeah, so we are now Twitch affiliates. What does that mean? Well, we've seen some of it. We're going to have to deal with ad breaks. Not a big deal. What else does that mean? That means we've got some emote slots that have opened up. I have a few plans. I'd like to make some emotes for Simba and Zoe. Beyond that, we'll figure it out. But yeah, so I'm not too plugged into Twitch culture. Obviously. So, if you guys have anything you'd like to see on the channel, new opportunities that we can take advantage of now that we're at this next stage, I'm all ears. All ears. Let me know. If you got any emotes you want me to add to the channel, if you got any ideas, any burning suggestions, drop me a line. All right, let's see. Now that we've got that little bit of business out of the way. Yeah. Hey, you know what? There we go. Clips of... I haven't made any particularly egregious old man noises in a while. But there are some good ones. I do tend to make some interesting sound effects. So if we could have some random sound alerts, that could be fun too. All right, so let's see. We've got about 3 minutes. That gives me some time to find someone to raid into. Who do we have that's out there reading tonight? Because as always, we do like to keep things... Oh, God. There were some noises in Genji. Oh, no. I have not cringed that hard in a very long time. Genji hurt. Let's see, lots of people writing. Is anybody reading? Come on. I know it's just a Tuesday, but come on. Let's see. Let's try and raid into Honey Toasty, I think. I think she's reading? Or doing whatever she does with her cozy stuff. But we've raided into her before, and it seems comfy. So, let's go ahead and give her our best, assuming she lets us raid. Oh, you know what? Not allowed to. Either she's not allowing raids at all, or there's too few of us. Either way. Let me see. I'll give one more look to see if there's anybody that's reading. There's writers. It's the problem with reading and writing being combined into one. All right. This is... Okay, there's Jevons? She's reading the Bobbsey Twins. Let's try. Nope, can't read to her either. All right, I do believe we are just gonna swing and a miss tonight. That's fine. it's a weekday. There's not a whole lot of readers. We have kind of restrictive rules on who we raid into. And that's fine. That's fine. All right. As always, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be ending here tonight. If you are on the YouTube side of the house, we are always welcome to a follow and a subscription to the channel and a like on the stream. Let me snooze the ads here. We got 5 minutes because we're closing. We can anyway, let the algorithm know that we're up to some fun things. Pull some friends in, catch the VODs, and enjoy us. Enjoy things together. If you're on the Twitch side, welcome! We're now affiliates, and we have done absolutely nothing with it. And you know what? It'll be a slow adoption, because I'm too old for this shit. We're gonna go ahead and finish up for the night. I hope you've enjoyed this return to Ernest Hemingway with a farewell to arms. We're gonna pick back up on Friday at 8 Eastern, our normally scheduled time. Until then, I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much for joining us, and good night.